MUKASHI, the crane's return of gratitude.
Hello, I'm Kuroneko Monk. Did you ever wonder as a child why the beautiful daughter said you must never look inside? When you analyze historical texts like Nihon, Ryoiki, and Kanjaku Monogatari from a different angle, fascinating descriptions emerge. A woman confined to the weaving room, growing thinner day by day. Analyzing this record from a modern perspective reveals that this might not have been a beautiful tale of gratitude, but possibly a factual record of systematic labor exploitation. What if the daughter was a victim of human trafficking? What if the weaving was forced labor? What if Never Look Inside was part of a surveillance system?
MUKASHI explores these hidden possibilities within ancient tales. If you want to re-examine history from new perspectives, please subscribe to our channel. Now, let's explore together this mysterious story that spans from the Edo period to the present day. Chapter 1, Original Text Digest.
First, let's review the story of the crane's return of gratitude. As we know it, a beautiful daughter appeared before a poor elderly couple. She pleaded, "Please make me your daughter," and offered to weave cloth as repayment for their kindness. However, there was one condition: never look into the weaving room. The cloth the daughter wove was extraordinarily beautiful and sold for high prices in town. However, with each session of weaving, the daughter grew thinner day by day. When the worried elderly couple finally broke their promise and peeked into the room, they saw a crane plucking its own feathers to weave cloth. Learning her identity had been discovered, the crane said, "I can no longer stay here," and flew away into the sky. The current form of this story is actually based on the 1949 play Yuzuru by playwright Kinoshita Junji. The original folktales were passed down in northern regions like Niigata and Yamagata, with similar records remaining in Tonomonogatari. However, what we should focus on might be the historical background. When this story spread, during the Edo period, especially from the late shogunate to Meiji era, the Tohoku region suffered from severe famines. During the Tenpo famine 1833-1839, many farmers had to leave home for seasonal work to earn their livelihood. Folklorist Yanagita Kunio made an intriguing observation about this story. The setting of confining oneself to a weaving room to weave sacred cloth derives from ancient rituals, where shrine maidens wove garments to offer to gods. But what if this sacred ritual was actually conducted for different purposes? Detailed examination of historical sources from that period reveals fascinating facts. The possibility that weaving was actually part of the Edo period's important industrial structure. Shinpen Musashi Fudokiko contains the description. Female workers from various provinces engage in weaving, their skills excellent, but many of unknown residents. What exactly does this mean?
Chapter 2, Historical Background and Analysis.
The reality of the Edo period weaving industry is becoming clear as something vastly different from what we learned in textbooks. Under the class system of that time, 85% of the population worked in agriculture as hyakusho, peasants. However, while samurai were only 7%, a minority ruling class, the actual economic structure was far more complex than imagined. Analysis of Kansei Choshu Shokafu reveals that many low-ranking samurai fell into serious economic hardship, particularly during the late shogunate period, side. Businesses by the samurai class became so common that the phrase samurai commerce was coined. Among these, the weaving industry was recorded as particularly high-profit business. Here we should focus on the identity of weaving factory workers. According to Edo Machigata Kakiage, multiple magistrate offices reported that numerous female workers of unknown identity exist at various weaving locations. Where exactly did these women come from? The human trafficking system of that time was likely deeply involved. Records in Simon Kyukyuho show that daughters being sold increased dramatically during famines, particularly in the Tohoku region, sending daughters to service positions in urban areas to support family livelihoods became semi-institutionalized. However, the reality of these service positions was the problem. Detailed examination of Kansei reforms materials shows that many women were forced into harsh labor in weaving facilities. Working hours were supposed to be from sunrise to sunset, but night work was often forced as well. Even more serious was the surveillance system for workers. Gajosho Hikajo explicitly prohibits entry to workshops. Under workplace discipline, while officially for technical confidentiality, the prevailing theory is that the actual purpose was preventing worker escape and concealing exploitation. Folklorist Orikuchi Shinobu provides intriguing analysis of this era's weaving industry. behind folktales passed down as sacred weaving rituals, lay actual industrial structures. In other words, the crane's return of gratitude might be a retelling of labor exploitation realities as a heartwarming story. Particularly noteworthy is the prohibition, never look inside in the story. This might not be mere narrative device, but reflection of actual factory systems. Before the factory law was established in the Meiji era, workplace surveillance and concealment were crucial issues for employers. Tenpo reforms materials contain descriptions of management, methods for female workers in weaving facilities, strictly prohibit entry to work areas, devote all time, except meals and sleep to labor, restrict external contact to prevent escape, quickly replace those with health problems to maintain productivity. From a modern perspective, these clearly constitute human rights violations. However, they were recognized as legitimate commercial activities at the time. Perhaps the crane's return of gratitude was created by someone who knew these labor exploitation realities, crafted with sympathy for the victims. The setting of a beautiful crane sacrificing its own body to weave cloth might perfectly overlap with the situation of female workers of that time.
Chapter 3. Reconstruction from the Hidden Perspective.
Let's reconstruct the crane's return of gratitude from the victim's perspective. A winter night in a snow-covered mountain village in Tohoku, 15-year-old Suru was traveling to a distant town's good service position to save her family from famine. However, deceived by her guides, she was abandoned in a remote location. The elderly couple who found Suru near death from freezing appeared to be merciful benefactors, but their true identity was actually former merchants who controlled the region's weaving industry. They protected daughters from famine-stricken families and made them work in their home weaving facilities. Suru, thank you so much, but I must return home as soon as possible. Old man, don't worry. Work here a little, save money for travel, then return. You can weave, can't you? Suru was cleverly persuaded to agree to temporary live-in labor. However, the life that actually began was beyond imagination. The workshop was a small room completely isolated from the outside, with bars on the windows. Working hours from dawn to midnight, with breaks only for meals. Suru created beautiful cloth with her natural skills, but received only minimal food as compensation. Old woman, the cloth you wove sold for a good price. However, after deducting housing and food costs, debt still remains. This debt system was the cunning mechanism that bound workers. Rescue costs, housing fees, food costs, material costs, debts accumulated under every conceivable pretext. And no matter how much Suru worked, she couldn't gain freedom. Even more serious was being completely cut off from external contact. For the reason that it would be problematic if your beautiful appearance were seen, Suru's existence was kept secret. Actually, the purpose was concealing evidence of labor exploitation. Suru, at least let me write to my family. Old man, don't cause unnecessary worry. Work a little longer and we'll definitely send you home. As months passed, Suru's body weakened from malnutrition and overwork. Her once beautiful black hair lost its luster, her cheeks became gaunt. Still, she had to continue weaving. Because the debt never decreased, one day Suru attempted escape with desperate resolve. However, discovered by the elderly couple, she was placed under even stricter surveillance. At this point, Suru learned the hopeless truth. There were many other girls like her, and many had died from illness and overwork. Old woman, there are many girls like you. If you complain, there are always replacements. Suru understood. She was being treated as a crane. She existed only to possess beautiful feathers. Skills. Have those feathers plucked, labor exploited, and create products cloth. Then came the fateful day. Information came that local officials would investigate the weaving facility's actual conditions. The elderly couple frantically tried to destroy evidence, planning to make Suru never existed. However, Suru summoned her last strength to entrust a hidden piece of blood-stained cloth to the investigator. She had injured her finger to weave a message pleading for rescue. Suru, if you look at this cloth, you'll understand the truth. What feelings we wove with. The investigation revealed the illegal labor practices at the weaving facility, and Suru was finally freed. However, by the time she returned home, her family had already, due to the famine. From this perspective, breaking the promise and looking might have been convenient for those trying to conceal the exploitation structure.
Chapter 4. Tactical Analysis. Incident Simulation.
Let's analyze this crane's return of gratitude incident from a modern legal perspective. If this incident occurred today, the elderly couple could be arrested on the following charges: human trafficking punishment law violation, the act of securing Suru under the pretext of protection, while actually forcing her into labor clearly constitutes human trafficking. Similar methods are used in modern technical trainee issues. And the 2017 Foreign Technical Trainee Proper Implementation Act prescribes 1 to 10 years imprisonment for such acts. Labor Standards Act violation, working over 15 hours. Daily employment below minimum wage and deprivation of break time constitute serious violations under modern labor law. According to Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare statistics, 2023 black company crackdown cases averaged over 100 hours of illegal overtime monthly. Tsuru's case far exceeded this. Unlawful confinement. Cutting off external contact and depriving freedom of movement constitutes unlawful confinement under Penal Code Article 220. Particularly, de facto confinement using debt as justification remains a frequent problem in modern technical trainee and sex industry cases. However, under Edo period legal systems, such acts weren't necessarily illegal. According to Kujikata Osadamagaki, managing servants was considered employer prerogative, with no concept of worker human rights. Let's consider modern technical trainee issues as a similar case. 2022 Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare surveys show about 2% of technical trainees, over 6,000 annually, go missing, with main causes being unpaid wages, long working hours, and violence intimidation. This structure remarkably resembles the Crane's return of gratitude. Simulation modern incident development. If a Crane's return of gratitude incident occurred today, this development would be expected. Stage 1 incident discovery. Through social media information spreading, reported as missing technical trainee, initially explained as part of training, but Labor Standards Inspection Office investigation reveals the reality. Stage 2 social response. Widely reported as modern slavery system, with criticism flooding the accepting company. However, opposing views like too spoiled and when in Rome, do as Romans do also develop, dividing society. Stage 3 legal response. Immigration Services Agency revokes supervising organization permits. Labor Standards Inspection Office files criminal charges. However, actual punishment is often light, with insufficient civil compensation. Stage 4 institutional reform discussion. Parliament discusses fundamental technical trainee system revision, but business world opposition leads to postponing fundamental reform. As a result, structures allowing similar incidents remain preserved. Interestingly, modern turning a blind eye structures remain intact. Consumers seek cheap products. Companies pursue profits. Government prioritizes economic growth. As long as these three interests align, Crane's sacrifices may continue. According to Asahi Shimbun March 15, 2023 article, technical trainee workplace accident rates are 2.8 times higher than Japanese workers. This indicates placement in dangerous, harsh working environments, just like Edo period weaving factories. Perhaps the Crane's return of gratitude continues being told because this structure fundamentally hasn't changed.
Chapter 5. Reinterpretation of the lesson.
Traditional lessons from the Crane's return of gratitude were: value gratitude, keep promises, and don't be greedy. However, from the labor exploitation perspective, completely different messages emerge. First lesson: see through exploitation structures hidden behind heartwarming stories. Modern society internationally focuses on purpose-washing phenomena, methods where companies justify unfair working conditions with beautiful reasons like social contribution, environmental protection, and for humanity. The International Labor Organization's 2023 report states 32% of global companies use mission for wage suppression. The modern version of Crane's return of gratitude structure, particularly in tech industries, crunch culture is rampant, forcing employees into abnormal overtime under the justification of changing the world. Game development companies and startups use the logic: if you have passion, compensation is secondary to exploit workers' dedication. Second lesson: don't look inside is standard concealment practice. When corporate misconduct is discovered, words like trade secrets, competitor countermeasures, and shareholder protection almost always appear. This is the same structure as don't look inside in the Crane's return of gratitude. In the 2016 Wells Fargo fake account scandal, employees attempting whistleblowing were silenced for corporate confidentiality. In the 2021 Facebook whistleblower case, Workplace condition investigations were prevented under privacy protection. Systems excluding truth seekers remain healthy across borders. Third lesson, well-intentioned people can become perpetrators. The elderly couple in the story aren't depicted as villains. Rather, they appear as kind-hearted people. This might be the most terrifying point. In modern supply chain issues, most multinational corporations disguise themselves with good intentions, like developing country support, technology transfer, and job creation. According to Human Rights Watch investigations, 78% of companies using child labor include community contribution in their corporate principles. However, UN Global Compact internal reports reveal that securing low-cost labor is actually the main purpose. Exploitation disguised as good intentions is the most difficult to detect structure where victims struggle to speak out. Fourth lesson, social structure, shifting responsibility to victims. The crane's return of gratitude ultimately ends with the crane leaving. While appearing as a beautiful farewell, it can also be interpreted as a structure where victims suffer in silence. Even today, workers reporting labor exploitation often hear freedom of choice, market principles, and personal responsibility. The International Trade Union Confederation's 2022 survey shows 59% of workers experiencing labor rights violations feel it was their own judgment error, often not pursuing perpetrator responsibility. Fifth lesson, globalized exploitation systems. Most serious is this exploitation structure expanding across borders. Under ideals like developing country economic development, global opportunity equality, and free trade benefits, unfair working environments are justified as development processes. World Bank 2023 data shows 43% of workers in multinational corporation supply chains work below living wages, often explained as investment in future growth. Bangladesh garment factories, Congo mines, Southeast Asian electronics component factories. Modern cranes working there continue plucking feathers in places invisible to developed country consumers. This global concealment system might be the soil where stories like the crane's return of gratitude are passed down as heartwarming tales. They might function to glorify victim sacrifice and conceal exploitation structures. What's needed today is the discernment to see through beautiful corporate slogans and courage to carefully observe places deemed trade secrets.
Chapter 6. Conclusion and Call to Action.
How do you process this labor exploitation theory tonight? The possibility that the tale of gratitude passed down as a heartwarming story was actually a record of systematic human rights violations. The reality of harsh forced labor hidden behind sacred weaving, and the structure of concealing truth under the reason of breaking promises. Knowing these possibilities, can you still think of the crane as an ungrateful benefactor? And can you say with certainty that the same things aren't happening in modern technical trainee issues, passion exploitation, and black companies? Many beautiful stories around us might actually be built on someone's sacrifice. Cheap convenience store lunches, budget clothing, 24-hour services. What if modern cranes supporting these are working while plucking feathers at this very moment? What will be the next crane's return of gratitude? AI development might create new exploitation structures. However, we who possess the power to discern truth have the responsibility not to repeat the same mistakes. If this labor exploitation theory sent chills down your spine, if you want to know more about crane's return of gratitude structures lurking in modern society, please subscribe to our channel. And if there are any modern crane's return of gratitude happening around you, please share in the comments. Workplaces demanding excessive unpaid labor, low-wage work justified by fulfillment, simple tasks disguised as training, they might be the beginning of new crane's return of gratitude legends. We'll meet again next time with all of you who have the courage to pursue truth. Without forgetting the perspective of the exploited, let's apply history's lessons to the present. This was Kuroneko Monk. Truth is hidden behind the beautiful stories,